There's a difference between something you try and something you don't break. We live in a world where people love to talk about goals. We set them, we write them down, we get excited about them. But the truth is, most people are not living according to their goals. They're living according to what's convenient because a goal sounds good, but a covenant will cost you something. And today, we're stepping into the covenant room. Now, initially, I thought this room was going to be about relationships, how we show up for people, how we stay committed, how we build and maintain connection. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized something. Before we talk about covenants with other people, we have to address the covenant we have with ourselves. Because the truth is, you can't be consistent with anyone else if you're inconsistent with yourself. You can't build trust in relationships if you don't trust your own word. And you can't fully show up for anyone if you keep abandoning yourself. So before we go outward, we're going inward. Because your life is not shaped by what you say you want. It's shaped by what you refuse to break, even when it's inconvenient. Let's get into it. Before I go any further, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you. Whether this is your first time stepping into this space or you've been walking through these rooms with me, welcome. This is Shou Talks. And if you're new here, this podcast is built around the idea that we're all building a life. And I like to think of that life as a house. Every episode, we step into a different room. Some rooms challenge you. Some rooms stretch you. Some rooms will make you sit with things you've been avoiding. But every room is intentional. Because the goal isn't just to talk. It's to build something solid. And today, we're stepping into the covenant room. And this room, this is where things get real. Because this is where we stop talking about what we want and we start looking at what we're actually committed to. A covenant is not a goal. It's not a temporary decision. It's not something you revisit based on how you feel. A covenant is a non-negotiable agreement. And in this room, we're not talking about agreements with other people. We're talking about the agreement you've made with yourself. Who you said you were going to be. How you said you were going to show up. What you said you were no longer going to tolerate. And the reason this matters is because everything in your life flows from that. Your discipline, your consistency, your relationships, your results, all of it. Because at the core of it, what you refuse to break will ultimately build you. And most people don't lack clarity. They lack commitment to what they already know. Let's make this real. Because the truth is, most of us have broken a covenant with ourselves. We've said, I'm going to take care of my body. I'm going to protect my peace. I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to stop tolerating what drains me. And then we didn't. And every time you do that, you don't just fall off track. You weaken your own trust. You start second guessing yourself. You start overthinking your decisions. You start questioning your discipline. not because you're incapable, but because you've trained yourself not to believe your own word. And if you don't trust yourself, nothing you build will feel solid. Here's where most people lose it. They build their life around how they feel. But feelings are temporary. They change, they fluctuate, they lie. Covenant does not. There are days you don't feel motivated. There are days you won't feel strong. There are days you won't feel like showing up. But covenant says, show up anyway. Because you didn't make an agreement with your feelings. You made an agreement with who you said you were becoming. And if your commitment disappears when your feelings change, there was never a covenant. That was convenience. Let me make this real for a second. Because I've had moments where I knew exactly what I needed to do. And I still didn't do it. Not because I didn't have the discipline. Not because I didn't know better. Because it was easier to delay it than to confront it. I've stayed in situations longer than I should have. I've ignored what my body was telling me. I've told myself, I'll get to it later. And in those moments, it wasn't about time. It was about avoidance. Avoiding the discomfort of change. Avoiding the responsibility of choosing differently. And what I had to realize was I wasn't confused. I was out of alignment because I had already made a commitment with myself. I just wasn't honoring it. And the longer I delayed it, the more disconnected I felt from myself. Because there's nothing more frustrated than knowing what you need to do and watching yourself not do it. And guys, that's the real tension of covenant. What you commit to becomes who you are. Not what you say, not what you post, not what you intend, what you consistently honor. So if you're constantly breaking your word to yourself, your identity becomes someone who doesn't follow through. But if you honor your word, even in small ways, you become someone you can trust. Covenant is not just about behavior. It's about identity. It's about becoming someone who stands on what they said, period. And I had to rebuild that. Not through a big moment, not through a dramatic reset, through small decisions. Showing up when I said I would. Doing what I said I would do. Even when nobody saw it. Even when it didn't feel significant. Because I realized self-trust isn't built in big declarations. It's built in quiet consistency. And over time, those small moments started to stack. And I started to feel different, more grounded, more clear, more aligned. Not because life got easier, but because I stopped negotiating with myself. I want you to sit with this. What's something you told yourself you were going to do and didn't? Where in your life are you choosing convenience over commitment? What are you currently tolerating that you've already decided you were done with? And the real question, can you trust yourself right now? Now, here's the part people skip. You don't rebuild covenant by making bigger promises. You rebuild it by keeping smaller ones. You start with one decision, one commitment, one standard, and you honor it. Not when you feel like it, not when it's easy, but because you said you would. Because every time you keep your word, you strengthen your foundation. And that foundation, that's what everything else in your life will sit on. Your life right now is a reflection of what you've been honoring, not what you've been saying, not what you've been planning, what you've been consistent with. So choose carefully, because what you refuse to break will ultimately build you. I want to thank you for hanging out with me. As always, every room we enter is an invitation, not to judge your life, but to examine it. Take what resonated, leave what didn't, but don't ignore your covenant with yourself. Tune in every Wednesday and step into the next room with me. Shou Talks is available on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Follow, subscribe, repost, join the conversation below. Until next time, protect your peace, honor your commitments, and be intentional about how you build your house.